Hi all, I'm back with a new concept. Welcome all to Stats Cosmos. In the last video, we covered central tendency concepts such as geometric mean, harmonic mean, median and mode. The focus of this video is to provide an overview of the most common measures of the dispersion. Let's start off with the session. Contents we are going to know about are what is dispersion, why it is required, meaning, definition and measures of dispersion. Let's see what is dispersion. Dispersion is the state of getting dispersed or spread. Statistical dispersion means the extent to which a numerical data is likely to vary about an average value. That is, it measures how much the scores in a distribution vary from the typical score. So, once we know the typical score of a set of values, we might want to know how typical it is of the entire group of data, or how much the scores vary from that typical score. This is measured by dispersion. Once all of you observe the image given here, in which you can see a central line indicating a central value, that is an average value, and three different types of curves you can observe denoted with A, B and C. Here curve A is showing very less spread of data or observations from the central value, and curve B is showing little high variation of observations from central value when compared to curve A, and C is showing still more high variation of observations from central value when compared to the curves A and B. This is how, to study the variation among the observations from the average value, we use dispersion. Why it is required? Dispersion is important as it helps in understanding how much a data is spread around a central value. It is usually used in conjunction with a measure of central tendency such as mean or median to provide an overall description of a set of data. Measures of dispersion are important for describing the spread of the data or its variation around a central value. If you observe the data, the variation is small when the values are very close together, and there will be no variation if the values are the same. Next we have meaning of dispersion. Dispersion is the extent to which values in a distribution differ from the average of the distribution. It indicates the lack of uniformity in the size of the items. For making you understand what is this lack of uniformity, here I am going to give a small example for you. All of you just observe this example. Here there are two data sets, and the first data set is 25, 20, 15, 10 and 5. There is a decrease in the values, and 5 is the interval in between. And for the second data set, if you observe, same order, descending order is given, and 1 is the class interval. That is, the difference between the observations is 1. Now, if you find out the mean values for both the data set is 15. I am going to find out the deviation of these observations from the central value. First deviation 25 minus 15, it is 10. Next 20 minus 15, it is 5. 15 minus 15, it is 0. 10 minus 15, it is minus 5. And 5 minus 15, it is minus 10. Similarly, I am going to do this procedure for the second data set also, and I got these values after doing the deviations from the mean. Now you can observe one thing, that when you find out the totals for both the sets, that is for the deviations, if you find out the total is equal to 0. And here also you can observe the same thing. Here plus 2 plus 1 is there. If you add plus 3 you will get, and here also minus 1 minus 2 minus 3. So plus 3 and minus 3 gets 0. Here also the same thing. Plus 15 and minus 15 get cancelled and will get 0. What we can observe here is, so here there is a uniformity in the data. So when there is a uniformity in the data, you can observe that the dispersion value is 0. Let me show you one more example. Here is an example where 70 is the assumed mean. Then if you find out the differences from that assumed mean. 52 minus 70, it is minus 18. 56 minus 70, minus 14. 68 minus 70, it is minus 2. 70 minus 70, it is 0. 75 minus 70, it is 5. 80 minus 70, it is 10. 82 minus 70, it is 12. When you add these values, that is deviation values, if you add, you can observe there is some variation from the actual value here, central value. So here the dispersion is existing in this case. As you can observe, the deviations are varying. So that is, the observations are very much varying from the central value here, assumed mean value. So here we can observe the dispersion very clearly. So this is how dispersion indicates a lack of uniformity in the size of the items. Next we have definition. There are so many definitions given for dispersion. Here are few among them. According to Bowley, dispersion is the measure of variation of the items. And according to Corner, dispersion is a measure of the extent to which the individual items vary. And according to Brooks and Dix, dispersion or spread is a degree of the scatter or variation of the variables about a central value. So if we want to define it further, it refers to a statistical term which depicts the size of the distribution of values expected for a specific variable. It can be estimated by several different statistics such as range, variance, and standard deviation. Now let's see what are the measures of dispersion. Here we can observe first classification is algebraic measures and graphical measure. Graphical measure means in the first slide when I was explaining about what is dispersion, I have given an image to you. So that if you observe, there you can see a graph which consists of the three curves and how they are varying from the central values, how the data set is varying from the central value we can observe. So that is a kind of graphical measure to indicate the dispersion. Here there is one more one which is algebraic measure, so in which we use the numerical values. Here there are two types in algebraic measures. One is absolute measure and other one is relative measures. Two types of classifications existing. First, let us know one by one what they are. Absolute measure measures the dispersion in the original unit of the data. That is, variability in two or more distributions can be compared provided they are given in the same unit and have the same average. When it comes to relative measures, measures of dispersion is free from unit of measurement of data. It is the ratio of a measure of absolute dispersion to the average from which absolute deviations are measured. So that is why it is called as coefficient of dispersion also sometimes. So here there are four different types of absolute measures available, that is range, quartile deviation, standard deviation, mean deviation. And there are four types of relative measures also, like coefficient of range, coefficient of variation, coefficient of quartile deviation, and coefficient of mean deviation. So in the coming video we are going to know about the calculation of these absolute measures and relative measures in detail. So this is the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you all for watching this video.